It's time to join your host, Jean-Francois Gemme, founder of List Building Anonymous, the 12-step program for building a profitable online business, and the only podcast which delivers A to Z strategies from the online trenches and experts straight to you.
Hi, my name is Jean-Francois, and I'm a list builder. I want to welcome you to today's episode where we'll go over the step 2 of the 12-step program for building a profitable online business. And today we're having a very special guest, someone that I would say is within the top 2, if not the top person to talk about the topic of today's step. And it's one of the top leader in ClickFunnels. So I give you Stefan Larsen.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm fine, and you?
Doing fantastic.
Great. So the step 2 is we came to believe that we could enlighten the attractive character that we are. So I know that you have a lot to say about that. So let's jump right in. The first part I would like to discuss with you and have your insight is the different elements of the attractive character.
Sure thing. Absolutely. It's so funny when people get started doing any kind of entrepreneurship or list building or anything like that. The tendency is for us to all, I kind of make fun of it, but we all want to put on, and be our best self, like as if we were going on a date with somebody else. We want to put our best self on. But the problem is when we do that, we go put like a shirt and tie on, And when I first got started in this business, I put a suit and a tie on and I got all professional and I started trying to act like I thought a business person should. I was living somebody else's story, which is funny. It's the first element of the attractive character is backstory. I wasn't living my backstory. I wasn't showing it. I wasn't exposing it. We're all kind of nervous to share those back pieces about us, but really those are some of the most important things you can share.
Yeah, exactly. And it reminds me that I had the same struggle myself because I had a lot of shame because in my backstory, there was things that normally it's not necessarily socially accepted, like drug addiction and also bankruptcy. But
sure.
What I've experienced is that a little while ago when I openly share that part of my story, that's when I begin to get some traction with my business.
It's so funny how that works. We always want to be polished. We want to be professional, but it's actually all those flaws that people start to attract, get really, attracted to us for. I remember the first set of videos I ever shot, I was in college. I went and I grabbed my wife's camera and I used it as a video camera and got this tripod all set up and I put a plant, in the shot and I put like this thing in the background and a picture frame was in the shot and I put a suit and tie on. And I was just watching those videos just like a week ago. And it's good content, but like that's the only thing you can fall in love with. It's just the content. You couldn't fall in love with me because I was being way too like stiff. There was too much starch in my shirt. There was way too much. I was just trying to be a business card, basically a living, walking around business card. And so yeah, that backstory though is huge. And the deeper that you can go into it, and the deeper you can pull the emotion out of the backstory, man, you got people running to you. It's kind of like when I'll get on stage and present, if I talk about certain elements of my story, my backstory, I'm like, hey, I was in the military for a bit, hey, I did this, hey, and I start telling specifics. Pretty soon, all the guys who were in the military just come up in the back and say, hey, what's up? But if the next time I go and I talk about how I'm a huge skier and I love to ski, in Colorado, suddenly all the snow people start showing up. And it's funny because you can craft, the story to attract the kind of person that you want to. Yeah, it's fascinating. There's a lot more power behind it than I think most people think. Just being exposed and vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also that exposing our flaws, everybody has flaws. So it's also a way to make them identified to a part of ourselves and feel more comfortable for them to open as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Another element is the parable.
Yeah. So parables are super powerful. It's funny. How do you share a backstory without telling a story? You have to, So you start telling stories. The parables, though, they're also stories, but they're stories that you specifically put together to teach a principle about your business. If you're going to go and you're going to start teaching, like about MLM, or you start teaching about, whatever it is, let's say I start using, we call it technobabble. I go out and, I obviously work at ClickFunnels, and my mom for a long time thought that I literally sold kitchen funnels. She thought I was like actually selling like kitchen like stuff, like kitchen hardware and funnels and spoons and forks and stuff like that. I was like, no, I work at ClickFunnels. She's like, yeah, like funnels. And I was saying technobabble. I was saying stuff that she had no idea about. It's so funny. Every time we get into an industry, we get super excited about it. We start running out there and we're like, look at all this cool stuff. I'm learning about this new opportunity. I'm learning about this new thing. And we get excited and we start learning all this vocab. And we start learning all these specific words that only people in that industry know. And we start learning tons of vocabulary and tons of vernacular. But what ends up happening is we get so excited about it. The first person that we see, we just go pounce on them and we start saying those vocab words. They have no idea what that means. And so what you have to do is you have to come up with parables that illustrate that technobabble term. Exactly. And so while you're saying the backstory, that's one part, kind of sets the stage, helps them fall in love with you and your character. But then when you actually start moving into the business piece, you have to have the parable, because that's really what bridges the gap and takes them. We call it the epiphany bridge. It's what takes them over to your side, into your industry, and educates them without confusing them.
Good. Great stuff. And the last part in the elements, which is maybe a little more advanced, but still important, is the polarity. So the importance to not trying, in fact, by enlightening that attractive character it's a way to say, I'm not going to try to please everyone. And so, but that brings, end up bring some polarity, and that's something important, I would say.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. It's actually, we always tell people when you first get started in entrepreneurship or list building or whatever it is, one of the more challenging parts, everybody expects, hey, you got to have a product or you got to have a service or there's some piece of value you got to push into the marketplace. Everyone knows that. But the second thing that most people don't really hear about or think about is that they need to find their voice. They have to be comfortable standing up and talking to a bunch of people. And if they sound like everybody else, no one's going to care about them. I'm sure you've heard of Howard Stern. Yeah. I don't like the guy, but we all know who he is because there's so much polarity. There's so much conflict. There's so much, you either love him or you hate him. There's no middle ground. And that's one of the biggest elements. I found that, I've been podcasting on my own and publishing and doing all this stuff. And I've been doing it for about a year now. And especially the last 6 months, I began to notice my own polarity started shooting through the roof. And I started saying things that I knew some people weren't going to like. And you can't be a people pleaser and build a culture. You can't be a people pleaser and build a business. It's so counterintuitive to what people think. It's like the customer is not always right. You got to have your own thoughts, your own opinions, and stand firmly on them and say, you know what? I hate VC funding. I think it's wrong. And I know I just pushed away most of my business marketing class teachers and students when I say that, I hate, I hate SEO. I get it. I understand why it's there, but I absolutely hate doing it. And when you can start to, those are just tactics and stuff. But when you can start doing that for your beliefs and your personal story and things like that, pretty soon you start carving this really deep line in the sand, and you'll get tons of people who have the exact same beliefs as you. But the weirdest thing happens. It's the second thing that starts to happen. All these people who would not have otherwise follow you, they don't even have the same beliefs as you. They start joining you. Because you drew such a deep line in the sand. They follow the confidence. They follow the fact that you feel like you know where you're going. But if you just started believing everything and you had no polarity, they wouldn't have done it in the first place. It's really an interesting scenario that starts to happen.
And that's bringing also to the, now that we've done the overview with the elements, but what you just said also bring up the fact that it's important to not choose because it's already there, but to identify our own identity.
Yeah.
And so can you go and talk about some of these?
Sure, absolutely. The attractive character as a whole, this concept is one of the only pieces that is in both the .com Secrets book and the Expert Secrets book. And it's because it's so important. And it's one of these things that I feel like people hear about and they don't, it's like, oh, I don't need to think through those things and actually put it together. It'll happen on its own. And that's true. But if you can actually sit down and decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to go through and let's choose an identity. The way the identities work is best if you just choose one. You can only do one of them at a time. Let me go through what are all the elements. And I write, this is exactly what I did. I sat and I wrote down my backstory. I sat and I wrote down my parables. I wrote down my character flaws, all the polarity I had. And that was the way I kind of jump started. Now it just kind of comes naturally. But you kind of manifest that through one of the four identities, which is, number one, you could be the leader. A guy like, Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank. He's definitely the leader personality type. That's his identity. Like, get out of my way. I'm a crusader. I'm going to go take over everything, Mm-hmm. And a lot of people get really attached to that. Garrett White is very much that way. Another one is the adventure crusader. And they're like, hey, let's go figure it out together, and they kind of start bringing other people along with them. The reporter and evangelist, that's actually the one that I started with. The reporter evangelist is the one that says, like, I had been building funnels for quite a while before I ever met Russell personally, or before I ever started working at ClickFunnels. And I had been doing it for other clients, and I had my own little business running, and it was awesome, and it did great. But I was like, how do I, it's exactly what you're doing right here on this podcast. I was like, how do I provide value to the marketplace when I'm so new? And so what I started doing is, I don't necessarily want to just come up with stuff to say on my podcast. What if I go interview other people, and you're reporting on what's cool out there, And that's a really interesting one to start with, because it puts you in a frame of credibility really quickly because of the people you interview and the value that they bring to the show or your business or your communication or whatever it is. And then that fourth one is the reluctant hero. So I kind of do a blend between the reporter, evangelist, and the reluctant hero in my, you usually just choose one. But the reluctant hero is like, look, the way they think is, look, I didn't necessarily want to do this. It's like most kids when they're growing up, they're not like, I want to be an internet marketer. They're all saying, hey, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a firefighter. No one really grows up thinking, I want to be an internet marketer. And so what these guys do is they'll come out, and the persona they take on is like, look, I wasn't planning on this. But I've been successful in this area over here. And you know what? I just feel obligated to share this with you. So here you go. Like, I'm not trying to be the hero. I'm reluctant about it. But look, this has worked for me. It might work for you too. And those are different ways you can kind of get around the listeners and your customers' false beliefs really easily through those four. So you just choose one of them and do all of the elements, one identity and all four elements.
You choose, but also there's one that you feel it's going to come naturally as well.
Absolutely.
And also you can eventually over time go from one to another. I would say like maybe make one change. Mm-hmm. Good. Great. So, okay. So
Absolutely.
that covers the identities. And the last part with the attractive character is the storylines. These are the different angles that you can, again, like you said at the beginning, a little bit kind of like the parables to make, to use a story to make a point or clarify a concept.
Absolutely. So it's funny. So there's obviously elements, then there's the identity that you take on, and then it's storylines. So like communication in general, and how do I talk to these people? How do I get these people excited? How do I push the message out there? And there's actually a fourth part to this, and we just call it the rules. And the rules to become. For example, in the elements, hey, you got to have a backstory. You got to have parables. You got to have character flaws. Well, the rules are kind of like the barriers between everything and everything, the identity and everything in the storyline. So the storylines go, hey, look, you can tell a story of loss and redemption. A lot of people do that one with health. They're like, hey, I used to be really skinny and then I got really fat. You can imagine yourself writing this out in an email or in, a podcast or story or whatever communication. But, hey, for loss and redemption, hey, I got kind of fat and then I went and I figured out how to lose all of it. There's loss and redemption, or I lost all this money and then I got it back. Robert Kiyosaki's a big one on that one. The second one is us versus them. And honestly, the culture that Russell has built is very much us versus them, right? Oh, I hate Infusionsoft, or I hate lead pages. So it's us versus them, or us against VC funding, or us against whatever it is. He's very strong on us versus them storylines. The third one is a before and the after storyline. And again, that's also a little bit similar to kind of the weight loss one. This is what my life was like before I found the solution. And this is what it's like, been like afterwards. There's actually a lot of ClickBank style products that fit into that with VSLs and such. Number 4 is like, we call it the amazing discovery. And that one fits really naturally into like the reluctant hero kind of identity. So you might say something like, look, I was going and I was moving right along. And I actually use the Amazing Discovery one a lot because I sit next to Russell Brunson all day, all day, every day. So it's easy for me to take that storyline. Hey, guys, I was sitting right here and completely out of the blue. I was not even expecting it. Russell just started teaching me for 3 straight hours, and I don't even know if he got into it. And I was taking notes, and I don't think he knew. This is what I found. This is what I discovered. You know, and it's a little bit of the reporter evangelist mixed with the kind of the Amazing Discovery, storyline. Number 5 is secret telling. And again, that's another one that the ClickFunnels community is all about. And secret telling, what's so powerful about this is that it confirms people's suspicions that there are secrets. Mm-hmm. That's the reason it works so well. I'm sure, have you heard of the 1-sentence persuasion course?
No.
It is insane. It's awesome. It's literally 1 sentence, but it kind of wraps this whole part up right here really, really well. And here it is. Here's the sentence. The sentence is, people will do anything for those who encourage their dreams, justify their failures, allay their fears, confirm their suspicions, and help them throw rocks at their enemies. So if you can start doing that in these storylines, like secret telling, like I'm confirming suspicions that there are actual secrets, right? They're secret telling. Even for third-person testimonials, you go and you get some of the testimonials to come in. You're doing those things. You're allaying fears. You're relaxing their fears. You're encouraging dreams. So if you take like the 1-sentence persuasion course and you kind of drizzle it around in your headlines, mixed with all these other elements, you have this really powerful formula for how to become an attractive character in any market. But honestly, there's actually 4 other rules. Do you mind if I go through them real quick? Because they're super cool. So this is in the new book, Expert Secrets. Mm-hmm. And these are the 4 rules. So you think through, okay, I got these elements, these storylines, I've got this certain identity. And these rules right here are like the barriers. They're like the parameters on how you should, as an individual, execute those things. So here's rule number 1. Rule number 1 is you have to become an attractive character that lives the life your audience wishes they could live. You have to live the life that your people are wishing they could live. And you're not showboating, you're not bragging, you're not going out and saying, hey, this is, I'm better than you. You're not saying any of those kinds of things. What you're doing is you're saying, look, I made it. How can the guru on the mountain pull somebody up if they're not already on the mountain? Mm-hmm. So they have to do that. So a lot of times on our TV show, the Funnel Hacker TV show, the behind the scenes ones, there's times where we will sit back and we'll be like, hey, what kind of crazy thing can we do just for fun, but also to make a story out of it? Mm-hmm. Displaying us living the life others want to live, and it's, again, not as a showboating way, but these are things that make you become memorable. They make you're helping people set dreams also and realize that they're. So for example, yesterday we went and we got, like, you guys all see it coming up here on the Funnel Hacker TV show, is that we went and we got these habanero pizzas. It was ridiculous. There's like 10 pounds of habaneros on a single pizza. It was so hot. It was ridiculous. And we filmed ourselves eating it. We're just like sweating. And it's like, but those are things that people want to watch. Those are things that pull out the attractive character. So that's the rule number 1, is you got to live the life others are hoping that they could live, All right. So the second one here is you have to maintain absolute certainty. Absolute certainty is, it's easy to be confident. It's like I'm not sure if you've heard of Satema. Satema's a fantastic. He's a NFL, just awesome guy. I mean, super awesome guy, super motivational speaker, coaches a bunch of people. But he always says in his programs, he's like, look, being confident is actually for kids. Mm-hmm. As a leader, you need to maintain certainty, and that's completely different. Mm-hmm. That's such a deeper level of confidence. Yeah. And so when you're maintaining absolute certainty, it's funny. Whenever you're talking to people, 2 people could be arguing. But whoever has the more certainty is going to win, even if they're actually wrong. Yeah. And that's how it works for all types of communication. Every time you talk with anyone, anytime you do anything, it's all about certainty. Yeah. And so it's funny. There are some people I'll watch that, like, wow, you're truly the attractive character. You're doing like 13 things wrong, but you have so much certainty that people are following you. If you have that one thing alone out of everything in the attractive character, you're going to be just fine. Yeah. Rule number 3 is you can't be boring. You can't be boring. In any kind of communication, do stuff that's crazy, that's loud, or whatever it is that's your own personality. There's a really good book. I cannot remember the name of it, but it basically says, look, screw your strengths and your weaknesses. Who cares? what you need to do is you need to highlight your differences. And that's exactly the easiest way to not be boring, is just to highlight your differences. Anything that makes you different, anything that's crazy about you. I love guns like crazy. Russell hates them. That's fine. I highlight my differences. I'm a different, attractive character, you know? So any of those pieces, any of those hobbies you have, whatever it might be, both hobbies, strengths, and weaknesses, all the flaws that you have, highlight those things. You know, make those things, stand those things out, and it becomes really easy again to create your own attractive character. And then the last and fourth rule here is that you need to know how to use persuasion, and that goes back into the one-sentence persuasion course, you know, on justifying failures, allaying fears, you know, confirming suspicions of people, helping throwing rocks at their enemies with them. People will feel very buddy-buddy with you if you start to do that, if you just persuade people. If you start to force people and use hardcore closing tactics, things like that, that pushes them away eventually. There's not a lot of longevity with that, but the other way around. Anyway, so yeah, I kind of dumped all over you, man, but attractive character is a big topic.
Yeah, exactly. It's in fact, there will be other episode to go deeper in some part of that step, because for sure we could be going for hours, and also all the part about the storylines. There's in fact a future step, which is step number 9, which is, you know, precisely on the storytelling. So that's something we'll go deeper eventually. But for today, if we can recap, so in this episode, we focus on the steps we need to go through in order to enlighten our own attractive character. We heard about the 4 elements of that attractive character. We also talked about different identities we can choose to focus on. And lastly, we saw some examples of storylines we can use to craft our attractive character into our audience's mind. So this part is really essential, and it's not by any luck that it's the number 2 of this 12-step program. In steps number 8, we will work on defining our target audience, which works closely with the attractive character in order to attract our ideal customer. So next time we'll work this second step. We'll go deeper with the elements, which are the foundation of our attractive character. Now for next week, we'll continue with step 3. That is, we made a decision to turn our focus on providing value first. And we'll have another yet amazing guest. So you don't want to miss this. So keep an eye on your email inbox, as I will send you the invite and reveal the name of that guest. So for now, I want to extend a warm thank you to Stefan Larsen, who allowed us to pick his brain.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jean-Francois. This has been a lot of fun.
Great. So I want to also thank you for tuning in, and look forward to lock arms with you and together master these steps. So until then, I wish you an amazing journey.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.